Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey, are you an aging athlete? Are you over 40 and struggling to get your desired results? I understand your frustrations. If you're like me, you're trying to get your running back or your cycling back or whatever sport you love to do, and you just can't figure out what's missing in your performance gains. How is your training and fueling program working for you? That's what I do. I personalize your nutrition and health program for you based on a bunch of different things. We collect data, collect clues from nutritional therapy assessment, from a food log with symptoms. Look at your genetics. If you've done something as DNA Fit, look at blood chemistry panels. Let's look at functional lab tests as a Vibrant Wellness wheat zoomer to test if you have leaky gut and sensitivity to wheat, peptides in foods. Look at food sensitivity labs. And Dutch tests, look at your hormones. So we look at all these hidden internal sources of chronic stress that may be impacting your ability to burn fat, improve performance, and longevity. So if you want to talk about how we can personalize your fueling, training, and performance plan, let me know. Set up a discovery call. Head to my website, debbiepotts.net, and reach out. Set up a call and we can chat about how I can help you be the best version of yourself. So you can stop blaming the aging process and instead change your mindset that you're embracing the change, that we train differently in our 40s and up versus what you did when you're 20, 30-year-old. We need to adjust how we eat, when we eat, why and how, but also match our nutrition with our exercise program and add some more health building lifestyle habits into our day. I call this all the holistic method comprehensive coaching program, where I work on individualizing clients' nutrition, exercise, stress reduction, sleep, movement, time outside, digestion and gut health, hydration, and my favorite, happiness, play, and laughter. So if you want to know more how you can be your best self, live your best life, and perform your best, head to debbiepotts.net, schedule a discovery call with me, and we can get started on your new health building journey. You can be that amazing athlete and stop blaming the aging process. Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I am doing a second video of the day to help you figure out the fueling and training confusion out there for endurance athletes, because men and women are different. So we want to look at ideally metabolic testing to figure out what works best for you and identify hidden stressors as well as external ones. So I want to share this really cool new website design, S Fuels Go Longer. And you can look at their new handout that they have. And it's upper corner here. You say download, you see download fueling guide. So click on that and you'll get a really cool, updated, brand new research and how to fuel correctly for your sport. So if you click on the guides up there, they're really helpful, and you can look at their information on the Race Plus that they have, a quick start guide. I don't work for them. I just think they're doing such good things for our low carb athlete community, and you can get a discount with our code low carb athlete. But I really love what the S Fuels and EndureIQ is doing, because I was doing this stuff when I was racing 2001 until 2012, 2015. I gave up trying after adrenal exhaustion, but no one was really around when I was racing low carb. And I had Generation UCAN was part of it. And it was a really good slow release fuel that I started to use at the end of my competitive racing career. But, you know, it's really interesting nowadays when we are all into fasted exercise and figure out timing food afterwards. I add in some carbs. When are carbs necessary or are they not necessary? Because out there you hear about carbohydrates are non-essential. We have essential fatty acids and essential amino acids, but we don't have any essential use for carbohydrates because we can make glucose from protein and fat. So really, yes, that is a fact. But if you're an athlete, how can you get your protein in? How can you get those carbs in to improve performance post-workout? So I've written some blogs and putting together stuff from Dr. Stacy Sims for the female athlete because the information out there is a little bit different. There's not a lot of research done on the female athletes. We need to look at both. So getting some ketones, aminos, or essential amino acids of your choice pre-workout, 5 to 15 grams of less than 3 hours. During workout, they say 5 to 10 grams every additional hour if you're doing more than 3 hours. So like a 5-hour bike ride when you're training for more endurance events, that might help prevent fatigue. And then post-training, 15 grams, a little bit higher end, but getting that from essential amino acids and then getting a protein shake later on for other sources of protein, not all at once, but I think, spreading it out. So we're getting that 30 to 50 grams of protein spread out throughout the day, and using some guidelines for strength training is going to be 5 to 15 grams of essential aminos, pre-workout, post-workout, 5 to 15. And if you're doing a fasted morning workout, I like unsweetened element and pre-workout essential amino acids capsules if it's doing a low heart rate work. But if we go to what S Fuels is looking at, more for Ironman distance training and ultra runs, so Zach Bitter and Dr. Dan Plews are both on their top athletes that involved in the company. But the research done in Dr. Dan Plews' performance lab in New Zealand is helping figure out the fuel source needed, and as they talk about the right fuel for the right time. So on the guide here, we've got this really cool new guide that they have done on S Fuels, and really looking at Endure IQ and S Fuels is looking at the right fuel, the right time. What does that mean? As I continue to personalize programs for my clients and then experimenting with my own self and my workouts, when I like to work out first thing in the morning, is my performance going to improve if I have some calories as in my coffee? I don't like to eat before a meal I don't like to have a meal before I work out. So, really figuring out when is it appropriate to add a little bit something pre-workout, and then what to prioritize after your workout depends on the intensity. So think about the fuel source of your workout. As I'm creating charts for my clients, is let's look at when you're working out, what you're doing, what heart rate intensity is that, when did you last eat, what did you eat the night before, how was your sleep and recovery and HRV, and then look at post-workout. And then if you are working out twice a day within 8 hours, we need to make sure we're fueling appropriately post-workout 1. So we have fuel for the next workout and more. So there's a lot to it, but I love this S Fuels chart. How to avoid bonking, metabolic flexibility, preserve glycogen, mitigate gut distress. So I went in this in a previous video, but really looking at if you are doing a lower heart rate workout, you're burning primarily fat. If you're a fat adapted athlete and you're training at that low zone 2, even zone 1 workout, maffetone, max aerobic function heart rate. So if metabolic testing CART you've done, where your prime fat burning heart rates are, where you're burning high percentage of fat, that fat oxidation rate, that's where you can burning mostly fat. So we don't need to add carbs in. You might need to have some protein before your workout as essential amino acids in liquid or capsules. And then I've been trying some performance mushrooms in my coffee. And those are in another podcast I did on, can that help my performance and endurance, and adding a little boost through performance mushrooms, so cordyceps and lion's mane and reishi and maitake are in there that I put in my coffee. So before training, do you first wake up and you get out workout, or do you work out 2-3 hours later? So that's going to depend. Do you eat something before? Or if you're like me, 5:30 a.m., I wake up, have my coffee, save more of my coffee for post-workout, but make my coffee, have my few sips, and have my water with my element in it. If I'm doing a higher intensity training workout, then I want to look at what did I eat, and timing my meal the previous evening, because again, at 5:30 in the morning, so Wednesdays I'm doing a spin class. It's a lot of high wattage, and we did 7 times, what was it today? 5 times 1 minute interval by your FTP, like 115% FTP. And then we did 1 minute, and then we did 45-second intervals, and then we did 30-second intervals. So you needed to be at, getting your high wattage FTP times 2. So it was a lot more anaerobic, and I lift weights a little bit before, nothing intense. So looking at what I ate the night before and when I last ate would be beneficial if I was working on improving my performance and hitting higher watts. Would I benefit from having a little something in my water, even coconut water, pre-spin class and during my spin class? That might be beneficial if I'm depleting muscle glycogen in a harder workout before a spin class. So what they talk about is during the workout, if you are doing more anaerobic, add carbs earlier for higher intensity training and racing, but don't do it pre-workout. So you want to wait. I think of this as like you want to wait until your muscles are working. So those GLUT4 transporters, I think transporting the glucose in your blood into the muscles to shuttle them into the muscle for fuel as muscle glycogen. We don't need insulin once you start working out to move it in. We use GLUT4 transporters. So we don't want to eat the carbs, according to Dr. Dan Plew's research, before workout. Now, Dr. Stacy Sims says for women, they could benefit adding a little bit of carbohydrates with some protein pre-workout. I think she said 20 grams or something. So she has a whole article on a very different perspective than Dr. Dan Plew's about eating enough and how you want to work out with some fuel in your body to optimize fat oxidation, to improve that fat burning in your workout is having something before and then making sure you eat in that 30-minute workout, post-workout. So she has an article, Nail Golden Recovery Time Window for Optimal Health and Performance. And I'm sure you can look up, carb timing with her on her blog post, see what comes up. Oh, 0. So I put in the wrong word. But if you look at Stacy Sims' research and her interviews, as she did with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she had some good information on, how to figure out performance gains with some little bit of fuel. And it didn't mean to have a big meal. It just said, you could have something in your coffee or have a few calories in your water. So that is on her site. Now, going back to research Dr. Dan Plew's and S Fuel are putting together, you can look on their wall chart, low intensity duration versus low tempo and upper tempo. That's going to change what your fuel source if you are doing training and if you're racing. If you're doing a longer race, maybe have some S Fuels train for low heart rate workouts. And then when you're going a little bit further, you might need something else as their train, or I like to have a bar on a bike ride if I'm not racing. So they have this great chart depending on what race you're doing, distance. And so it's talking about endurance exercise, getting that fat burning capacity improving. And then when it is important to add some strategic carbs into your workouts, that you are being in a training at anaerobic levels. So if you are doing a hard, intense workout, like I'm supposed to be doing on Wednesday mornings, if I can't hit those numbers and beat my watts that I'm trying to do, meet it or beat it in a workout, I need to look at, all right, I need to really let go of not eating anything and have something in my coffee or have something in my water and not be afraid of, I don't know what you're afraid of, because my goal, as I said in a previous podcast, was I'm not trying to burn fat, and that's high intensity spin class. I am trying to improve my power meter, my full FTP. So if I'm trying to hit 300 watts on a minute sprint or 30 seconds, I need to look at how I'm fueling the night before, or even look at something in my water to add a little boost. So that is where it's N=1 experiment. And I think it's important because I know a lot of men will say, oh, I can go fast this long. And yes, I can too. But women, we might improve our performance by having a little bit of fuel pre-workout in that fasted morning workout. So it's that men versus women. But S-Fuels Train, I think, is a really good option for when you need to go longer. It's not a lot of calories. It's 1 gram of carbs. It's 3 grams of protein, 4 grams of fat, but it has the just steady energy, just keep a little coconut oil, a little bit of the peptides from collagen, and then the glutamine. Like glutamine's in there. I think the glutamine is in that one to help for gut health. So, looking at these as option for your long, slow, low heart rate. Not that you're slow. You should be faster as you get going. And then when to add the S-Fuels Train is what I've been talking about. So checking out that Race Plus, that might be good for my spin class. If it's just putting it in the gel bottle, the squeezy, or, putting it in some water in my fuel. Okay. So that is what they're doing on S-Fuels. Good information on their new handout and their references. Now, if you go to Endure IQ, they're talking on a recent blog post about carbohydrate periodization and their approach to timing those carbs, the right fuel, the right time. Their approach versus others, this is, remember, for endurance sports, people that are competing at high levels. So if you are burning a higher percent of carbs at a race pace or doing HIIT, high intensity intervals, speed work like running or biking, that you might need to look at different fuel plan and have the appropriate carb intake around the training sessions. And that's what they're talking about here. We need to consider the appropriate carb intake around training sessions designed to maximize fat oxidation, as a high carb diet intake will blunt fat oxidation during exercise. So they might recommend resisting significant carb intake before and during relatively easy sessions targeted at eliciting high fat oxidation rates. So that's if you're doing zone 1, zone 2, maffetone training we talk about, right? So I think you need to train with a heart rate monitor because most people don't know how to go low enough. So that is something to look at right there, is most people don't go low enough to be actually in that zone 2 workout. So metabolic testing, ideally, find someone with PNOE, P-N-O-E, metabolic testing card, or come to San Diego. Now, their article here that Dr. Dan Plews and one of his students, they did a study, and you can look through this, but their data, I want to go through it all, but just talking about low carb timing. And if restriction begins with their ability to go long, then some carb supplementation in later stages should be recommended. Remember that exercise duration is the most potent stimulant for fat oxidation. So the specific macronutrient manipulation depends on your duration, intensity, and I would say gender. So they say high intensity interval training sessions targeted at producing a highest possible power output, as I was talking about me in spin class, and increasing your VO2 max. We are less worried about fat oxidation, which is my point. If I'm trying to work on getting faster and hitting run speeds, I've been doing 2-3 minute intervals, fast as I can, some 30-second run sprints up a hill, that my goal is not to burn fat again, right? So this is what they're saying. If we are focused on increasing our power output and increasing VO2, we're not focused on, priority is not fat oxidation. So in these sessions, we want to provide the muscle with carbohydrates it needs to maximize high intensity performance. So we might add some pre-exercise meal, add some carbs to a pre-exercise meal to ensure that we're properly topped off. This approach is supported by another recent meta regressions. We found that activation of the protein AMPK, the key signal for training adaptation, does not appear to be blunted by extra carb availability around very high intensity sessions. Again, wearing heart rate monitor if you're doing longer intervals to know if you're nailing those times and you're actually going hard enough to make it beneficial to add in those carbs. So they say it does appear that other signals like lactate accumulation and degrees of acidosis generated by exercise overrode those signals and the main driving factors. So high carb or low carb diet, we know Dr. Dan Plews, if you follow what I've been sharing from him, and as a low carb athlete, endurance athlete, we want to burn primarily fat as our main engine, right? We want to look at like what Peter Defty talks about, the optimal fat metabolism, OFM. And Dr. Dan Plew's approach, again, is looking at the low carb diet and then looking at more the larger training volume. And he coaches athletes looking at this right fuel, right time approach and improving fat oxidation to have the ideal outcome. I want to get faster, stronger, and be more powerful as I get older, not get slower. So I need to tweak this based on my goals. So he says in this article, by improving fat oxidation is the most important outcome here, and the right fuel, right time approach can be effective at producing the desired result. So the data in this article shows that fat versus carb oxidation of Chelsea Sodaro, one of their key athletes who won Ironman Hawaii and was at our San Diego Tri Club meeting in December. She's amazing. They've been showing her changes. So if you go to the article here, right fuel, right time, carb manipulation, you can see the changes Chelsea made by training with Dan. And I'm sure Dan's going to have a lot more pro athletes working with him. So check out this article. It's pretty cool. And, following a polarized or pyramid training intensity distribution is what they're talking about. Most of the training performed at that, train low, race high, the fat burning intensity, maintaining a lower carb diet and tweaking, I think, the fat and the carbs based on the intensity, maintaining the protein intake, but looking at your workout. So implementing carbohydrate periodization according to your training, lots of good information's in here. So I'll finish up here. Restricting carbohydrate intake around and during low intensity activity with low glycemic demand. Don't be afraid to ingest carbs during very long durations after about 2 hours, hour and a half, targeted at improving fat oxidation. This will help extend the duration of those sessions. I must say I like to add in HVMN ketone IQ in there too, halfway through my ride. So during long tempo-based sessions, when the intensity is clamped, that means between the first and second threshold, there may be more adaptation to be gained by restriction carbohydrate beforehand, starting the session with a lower muscle glycogen. So interesting experiment. Fuel with more intense sessions with a few extra carbs to support training quality and maximize stimulus for adaptation. And the last one, ensure adequate overall calories are always ingested, because I know, side note, a lot of clients are coming to me and they have low energy availability symptoms. So especially looking at on days when you are having low carb intake, make sure you're eating enough. And I know I struggle with that. So this chart, you can go to S Fuels for the fuel, but they have a really cool chart on here. And just to finish up this thought today, how to fuel. So if you go to their website, talking fast, not breathing. So session endurance versus low tempo, Ironman specific, upper tempo, a threshold VO2 max, anaerobic capacity. So take a look at this chart. Go to enduriq.com blog, right fuel, right time, carb manipulation. So find this out. If you are doing HIIT training, anaerobic capacity, pre-workout 4 to 24 hours before. So this is a good point. I read this somewhere else. If you are working out in the morning, as I'm doing, did I eat carbs the night before and not work out afterwards? Carbs, I mean nature's carbs. I go for more root vegetables. Okay. So I like my coleslaw, cabbage, but getting more root vegetables as more starchy carbs for athletes is good. Feeding my microbiome and supporting my liver. Those are foods I'm going to pick. Cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli sprouts, having some good foods that are going to feed my body, give me purpose. Now, if you are looking at morning workout, that's where you have to experiment. If you're doing weights and then doing spin class like me, maybe you have coconut water. 1 hour pre-workout, protein and carbs. During early stages of training, maybe you have electrolytes and caffeine. 20 minutes in. If you're later stages of training, this is carbs post-workout 20 minutes. Post-workout, you have your carbs and protein. Maximize work rate for that's your anaerobic capacity. So if we're talking speed work, like I'm trying to do twice a week, a run session and a bike session that I'm hitting fast as I can go, get my heart rate up high as I can go, that's where you want to tweak your fueling. So let me know your thoughts. This is what I'm doing with clients, but also looking at functional lab testing to put this all together in your sleep and your stress management and everything else. So hopefully that helps you. So check out their sites. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.